Good morning. Today we're providing a renal capability framework webinar to provide additional information about the implementation process for the framework. My name's Michael Langley. I'm Senior Policy Officer from the Ambulatory Policy section of the department, and this is my colleague Sue O'Sullivan, who's the Assistant Director from Health Services Policy. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to start off with an overview of what capability frameworks are, a bit of background where they came from, and I'm going to talk about the self-assessment process. We'll run through some questions and answers, and then we'll talk about some next steps in the process. So, Sue.
So I'm going to talk to you about why we're working on capability frameworks. Targeting zero is where the recommendation came from. And you may recall that Targeting Zero was commissioned by the Minister for Health following the discovery of a cluster of tragically avoidable perinatal deaths at Djerriwarrh Health Service. A report was undertaken in 2016 and it was a review of hospital safety and quality assurance in Victoria. And the report found that the department had failed to provide adequate oversight of quality and safety of health services, and it had failed in its role as a system manager of the Victorian Public Health Services. And it recommended that the department play a stronger role in managing risk in the system to ensure that hospitals only offer care that is within their capability, with high-risk care concentrated in the centres where it is safest. There was a recommendation that the department expand capability frameworks to cover all major areas of hospital clinical practice and also to monitor adherence to the capability frameworks across both public and private hospitals. So what are capability frameworks? They describe the clinical services and complexity that will be safely managed by a health service against 6 levels. It describes the workforce skills, the infrastructure, equipment, clinical support services, as well as the clinical governance needed. It has a common language for staff, the community and other health services about a local health hospital's capability, and it also supports a transparent approach to planning and service development at a local, regional and system level. Some of you may know that we already have a capability framework in place in Victoria at the moment, which is the Maternity and Newborn Services Framework. It was first used and developed in 2010 and has recently been released. A revised copy of the capability framework has been released in March of 2019. So some people at your health services will already have experience with capability frameworks if that specialty is available there. The next question relates to the consultation process for the development of the frameworks. The department in February of this year invited feedback on the draft service descriptors for each of the 4 clinical service streams. So we put out 4 capability frameworks, draft capability frameworks at the one time, which were renal, surgery, emergency and urgent care centre and cardiac. And that feedback was provided back to the department and the service descriptors were updated in response to this feedback. Then in April of 2019, draft versions of the framework, including the revised service descriptors and the service requirements, were again circulated for consultation. Stakeholders consulted include our health services, private hospitals, professional associations, unions, peak bodies, Safer Care Victoria, relevant clinical networks and a number of business units internal to the department. As a result of this consultation, the department received feedback from 87 organisations and interested parties. This included 47 health service responses, both public and private, and 40 stakeholder organisations and individuals.
Okay, thanks, Sue. So I'm just going to do a quick recap of where we are with the self-assessment process. So an email was sent to the CEO of of each of the 11 renal hubs about 2 weeks ago, and attached to that were templates for each of the renal facilities that related to that hub. Parallel email was sent to all the CEOs who provide facilities for satellite renal services for those hubs, with a copy of the template for their facility. We've asked that the hubs take responsibility for coordinating the self-assessment process for all the facilities within their domain. We've asked that also that each hub nominate an executive member to take responsibility for signing off or authorising each of the self-assessment templates, and that they are returned to the department by the 8th of November. You can do it sooner if you like. And we've also established a web portal for the submission or uploading of those completed templates, and I'll show you that in a minute. To support the self-assessment process, we've developed some online supports. We've got a general web page which provides a bit of background to the capability framework, much of which Sue's just provided to you, but it's also online now. On that web page there are links to the framework document, the overarching document with all the descriptions for the 6 levels. There's a link to a self-assessment, a template, an example of a self-assessment template, so you can see what's expected and how you can complete them, and also a link to the submission portal. I'll just show you the general web page. So this is the Capability Framework's web page. On this there's a bit of background, notes about the implementation process. You can see there's a flowchart here, which I'll go back to in a minute. Some points about the implementation. You may be interested to look at this table here. This is the reference table that we developed to support the provisional level allocation. It's data drawn from the Victorian admitted episode dataset, which we used to identify the appropriate levels. You can study that at your leisure. Some more contacts, some reference to the core capabilities, which are outside of the clinical streams. You'll hear a bit more about those later, I'm sure, if you're not already aware. And at the very end are the links to those documents that I referred to earlier. There's a link to the Targeting Zero report if you want to study that, if you haven't already seen it. The copy of the Maternity and Newborn Capability Framework, the implementation version for the Renal Capability Framework, and the example template that I referred to before. So this is that implementation process, just to show you where we're up to at the moment, which is fairly early on in the process. You can see there's a little bit of work to go through before we finalise that, and you can study that at your leisure. So now I wanted to talk to you about the template itself, and just to highlight a few features which will maybe explain some of the questions you might have in advance, or to provide you with some support. So firstly, you can see that there's a link to the Capability Framework document itself. That's the overarching document, so if you want to read above and below your area, you can go to that and download a copy. It's in Word and PDF. Then you can see the table which from the VAD data, which we've provided for each facility. We've only included levels where data has been recorded for that facility, so if you only see columns for 2 and 3, that means that facility has only recorded data up to a level 2 or 3. We've also included some data beyond the provisional allocation, just so you can see what activity does occur in that facility. The black square indicates the provisional level that we've allocated to you, and green just to bring to your attention some of the data that falls within the minimum activity levels. We've also provided other data so you can see what's going on. Down the bottom there's a link to the general web page I've showed you before. On page 2, see there's a comments section. Some of you may be interested to contribute to put some information there. That's if you feel that the provisional allocation that's been provided for your facility doesn't really fit with your understanding of the capability. That's where you can make comments, link to additional data or provide additional data, or generally provide feedback on the process. Just a note for let's go to the next slide, which shows that the sections that need to be filled in. This is from the example where it says yes or no, or met or not met. We're asking that you fill in yes or no, or met or not met, but not either. Not both, and not blank. And if you leave it blank, then we'll say that it's either a no or not met. There's also a link to the online submission portal, which I'll show you in a second, and also the sign-off section, which we're asking the executive sponsor to authorise the completion of each template and submit it through the online portal, which looks a little bit like this. Basically, you can select your hub and you can fill in your campus site. We may, by the time you get to this, have put in a drop-down box for all the facilities that we've sent and prepared templates for, and then fill in the rest of the information. And that means that we have a registered copy of your submission, so there won't be any confusion about that. So, seen those. So now we have some questions that we've provided answers to, which we feel may help explain some of the queries that are out there in the sector. I think Sue's going to answer the first one.
Yep. Thanks, Michael. So we've invited health services to provide us with questions via email, and this is, I suppose, a bit of a cross-section of the sorts of questions we're getting. So the first one is, how was the provisional level for my facility decided? So this, in some ways, is covered by what Michael has already said, but proxy procedures were allocated for each level, with levels set for minimum requirements. The provisional allocation reflects capability in the capability framework document, and the data was used to build the capability profile. And as already mentioned, the data we used the data reported by health services from the VAED for 18-19. And as Michael has said, if there are queries that you have in relation to the data that has been provided, certainly provide that back to us, and we will certainly have a look at it. Now, question 2 is, I don't agree with the provisional level allocated. It doesn't match all the services we currently provide. So what we want to assure you is that the level allocated is provisional. And it's up to the health service to demonstrate how it operates currently at a different level than that allocated. The provisional level is a starting point for discussion with the department. And what you've got there is just a little bit of a summary there of what capability frameworks are that you can read yourself.
Question 3, whose responsibility is it to fill in the self-assessment forms for the satellites? Well, ideally, it's up to that to be developed between the hubs and the satellite facilities, but we're asking that hub managers are responsible for coordinating and overseeing the completion of all self-assessments. It doesn't really matter who fills it in, as long as the information is correct and it's agreed to and authorised by the hub manager. And again, if we can get those hub executive directors to sign off and also to let us know who they are, that would be much appreciated. What if I answer no or not met to some of the questions? Does that mean the facility drops down a scale? Well, the purpose of the self-assessment tool is to identify your actual or current capability. So this is a starting point in this capability development process, and there will be a later step in which we'll have discussions regarding your facility's aspirational level. So if you feel you need to change your current level, that's a discussion that will happen with the department at a later stage. But at this stage, we're just trying to collect the data. And
the last one, what happens after this stage? So all self-assessments will be reviewed and collated by the department, and there'll be discussion between the department and facilities to explore clarification and to develop strategies to bridge a gap and associated risk plans.
Okay. So, next steps. Again, we're just urging you to complete those templates and submit them to us by the 8th of November or sooner, and to get those health service executive nominees sent to me. I'm the main contact for this project. My details are on the screen. You can call me. I'm happy to answer any questions over the phone or take by email. There's also a general capability framework email address which is on the website, which was on this but it's disappeared. As again I said, happy to take your calls about anything relating to the project. I think that's it.
So thank you very much for joining us for this webinar, and we encourage you to continue to send in any questions that you may have, and jointly we will do our best to answer the questions. Thank you.